Well, you know what they always say, remember the Alamodome. The stadium built back in the mid 1990s that was supposed to bring the NFL to San Antonio. Well, it failed, but it does have a very interesting history, hosting a number of different events. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of the Alamodome. It broke ground late in 1990 and was opened in mid 1993. The cost of it sitting right around $370 million in today's money. Pretty standard for a stadium back then. The Alamodome had high hopes of being a home to an NFL franchise that possibly could relocate, or maybe an expansion team in San Antonio. That expansion team does come to Texas, but it's not San Antonio. The NFL goes to Houston. They become the Texans in the late 1990s, and the Alamodome focuses its attention on the NBA because it originally was built to host the Spurs. Believe it or not, 1993 to 2002, it did host the Spurs. They wanted a bigger place to play. Well, they certainly found it. When you look at its capacity for basketball, surprisingly just 20,000. Of course, it is expandable to 70K, but the Spurs had a capacity right around 20K. They ended up getting pretty tired of it after 9 seasons and moved into their own arena, the Alamodome, most famously known for hosting the Alamo Bowl from 1993 all the way to present day. It is a relatively big bowl, I would say, but just taking a look at the stadium overall, the most interesting aspect of it, if you guys know Hard Rock Stadium, the newly renovated Miami Dolphins Stadium, this thing looks like a carbon copy of it, just with a ceiling. Like, it looks like the exact same thing to me. There was actually a renovation idea to where they would take out the ceiling and it would become Hard Rock 2.0. That's what it would be, but they didn't end up doing it. They also hosted the San Antonio Texans, a CFL team, in 1995. They hosted a few New Orleans Saints games, the only NFL regular season action to take place at the Alamodome was because the Saints needed a home after Katrina, and they went to a number of different venues. The Alamodome hosted about 3 regular season New Orleans Saints games. They went 1-2 in those games and sold out every single one of them. Really, really solid attendance. Also, UTSA, it's been their home since 2011, the college football team. You know, not a great location for a team like UTSA. There's going to be a lot of empty seats. The upper deck is normally always empty, and that is going to create a bad atmosphere. That's how it always is, though, with kind of the mid-major college teams playing at the bigger facilities. It is what it is. Right now, the Alamodome is just mainly known for the Alamo Bowl, along with hosting UTSA. So you can see the upper deck, there's like 4 different, it's like split into 4 different sections, which I really don't like. There's a clear opportunity if they wanted to do it. I don't think they will, but there's a clear opportunity to renovate like each of those pillars that divide the upper deck, and you could do something really cool with them. You could make them party decks, multi-level bars, things like that. It would actually be pretty sweet, and also you could hollow out the ceiling, make it see-through, and really spruce the Alamodome up. Again, they're not going to do that because it's not like this place is getting an NFL team. It would be interesting if somehow San Antonio got an NFL team. They might use the Alamodome. Would they renovate it? Would they build a brand new stadium? I honestly think they would completely renovate the Alamodome, probably cost $300 or $400 million, and that would be that. Now, when it comes to Final Fours, it already has hosted 1 Final Four, and it's going to host another Final Four. Really, really good for college basketball, in my opinion, because I don't think the upper deck is too far away from the action. Normally, what you get with these Final Four venues is the seating is just crazy high, and with the Alamodome, how the upper deck is aligned reminds me kind of Ford Field. It's just not that high up, so it's not like the seats are going to look ridiculously bad. They've hosted one, and again, they are hosting another. The Alamodome also hosted spring training baseball games for the Texas Rangers from 2013 to 2017. Right before the regular season starts, the MLB teams, will go back to their home cities for a few days and sometimes play games at their home parks. In this case, the Rangers played at the Alamodome. The Alamodome cannot host any regular season baseball. It is disqualified because of its dimensions down the right field line, just 275 feet. I remember the Rangers playing here, and I really hope they go back for the spring training games because it's just so ridiculous and it's so fun to see a fence that short. We really never get to see that 275 down the right field line. According to the MLB, the wall needs to be at least 325 feet from home plate, or it needs to be a really high wall. But the Alamodome has hosted college football bowl games, preseason NFL games, regular season NFL games, preseason MLB games, regular season NBA games. The Spurs actually celebrated their 50th year anniversary last year in a record-setting regular season attendance for the NBA, hosting the Golden State Warriors at the Alamodome. So the Alamodome, it's your typical story, originally built with the idea it was going to get an expansion team. Didn't happen, so they have to pivot and use it for different things. You know, I'm sure when this was built, there were huge aspirations that this thing would host Super Bowls. It would host hundreds and hundreds of regular season NFL games. And now looking back, you know, about 30 years into its existence, it is a kind of a sad story with it only hosting those few New Orleans Saints games. It certainly can host NFL action, but I think for it to be a permanent home, it would be a huge renovation similar to the Hard Rock renovation where they spend $400 million, they put in a see-through roof, and they really renovate those pillars. Outside of those pillars, it's a very standard look. You know, there's really nothing special about the Alamodome in terms of its interior design. It's just your typical run-of-the-mill domed stadium, you know, with the two-deck approach similar to the Metrodome, similar to the Pontiac Silverdome. Those two come to mind when thinking of what it looks like, and its total capacity for football and its total capacity for baseball is 52,000. For football, it's 64K. Apparently, they have different capacities for Canadian football at 59,000, but it is expandable totally to 70K if it ever hosted a major event. It's also hosted the Women's College Basketball Final Four, for whatever that's worth. Its greatest attendance for a UTSA game was way back in 2011 when they played their first home game there. They beat Northeastern State University 31-3. And the attendance was 56,000 in that one. The highest attendance for an NFL game was in October of 2005. The Saints lost to the Falcons 34-31 with a total attendance of 65,000 in that one. So the Alamodome acting as a Swiss Army knife, also hosting concerts, music events, soccer games, Canadian football games, and it does have a very, very small renovation scheduled for this year where they're renovating the concourse area, some of the concessions. I saw some of the renderings. It kind of looks depressing. It just kind of doesn't look like they're really doing much to it, but I mean, I guess they're installing some new lighting. It is what it is, taking a look at it. It would be really sweet if they actually fully invested in a renovation to the Alamodome, because I do think they could make it look really, really cool. But right now, it is kind of just sitting obsolete. It's like the whole idea, you know, if they had an NFL team, this thing probably would have had a massive renovation in like 2016 or 2017. But because they don't, there's no one that's really going to foot the bill for a mega renovation of $500 million, and it's just going to kind of stay there and become obsolete, when in reality, you know, at this point in its life, in a perfect world for the Alamodome, they get an NFL team, they get the renovation, they get standing room areas, they get bars and things like that, they get a completely new roof with see-through. That's natural light. That's another cardinal sin with any stadium nowadays if there is no natural light. And yes, with the Alamodome, there is no natural light. So that's a major problem. But I just don't think there's enough money there where it makes sense if all it's hosting is the Alamo Bowl and UTSA games and occasionally a Final Four. You can't really justify a renovation even though it does need it. It is a sad story, but it is what it is. That is the story of the Alamodome, originally built with the idea they would get an NFL team. It didn't end up happening, so they've had to pivot, and now they are the host of UTSA, the college football team. Guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.